Deep in the heart of tribal India, the Sarguja district of eastern India borders the lush green forests of the Singhbhum region.
Early 80s, the ruthless clearing of vegetation made more land available for mankind's insatiable demands. Age-old jungles were ablaze. The raging fires swept through thousands of acres of prime natural forests, devouring millions of irreplaceable micro-life support systems, endangering many species of fauna, and destroying the home of the Indian wild elephant. Land use had changed. Forests had to make way for mushrooming humanity. More and more agriculture was accommodated. The food crisis had become top priority.
With the onslaught of human progress, excessive industrialization, mining, and deforestation put pressure on wildlife territories, especially elephant corridors. Severe deforestation jeopardized miles of natural elephant habitat, fracturing ancient migratory corridors, confining these giants to their home range, leaving little for the survival of these mighty beasts.
Desperate for sustenance, a herd of 18 wild elephants were forced out of their natural territory in Bihar into the sterile teak plantations of eastern Madhya Pradesh. Bereft of diversity, these forests could not sustain a herd of 18. In their search for food, the elephants had perforce taken to breaking houses and raiding villages, regularly plundering fields and homes, leaving destruction and often death in their wake. In a series of attacks over 1 week, the village of Ganjadhar was severely affected. Bauria reveals the extent of the destruction of her home. She lives in constant fear. An elephant had walked right through her house. South Sarguja is a peaceful rural belt of tribal farmers. This area had had no history of wild elephants for more than 100 years. The tribal population, belonging to 200-odd villages fringing the forests in the area, are basically subsistence farmers and herdsmen living off the soil and the forests. These tribals initially regarded the elephants with devout faith as incarnations of the deity Ganesh. They had no awareness of the pressure put on these elephants due to their dwindling habitat. The villagers faced a terrifying menace from the forests that had earlier sustained them.
The elephants come in the evening making strange noises. All we can do is run for our lives.
Her house and granary ransacked and fields trampled. Any deification of the elephants in Bauria were wiped out as she showed us the pulverized remains of her only cow. To protect their harvest, villagers had to store their food grains on treetops, away from the reach of the animals. All their provisions were hoarded away on the topmost branches of huge trees. Frightened and helpless, villagers and their entire families had to leave their homes every evening as dusk approached. For many years, a general exodus occurred at twilight. Each dwelling was evacuated as they fled into the descending darkness to spend their nights out in the open, away from the threat of an elephant raid. Some stayed back, either too old or too sick or just tired of running away. Often villagers would come back at dawn to see that their houses had been raided. Undigested food grain and bits of cloth left grim testimony of the conflict between man and animal. Their huts were demolished and their year's harvest destroyed. Their homes were no longer a shelter to them. By December 1993, 45 people in the area had been killed by this herd.
At night, we heard the elephants and we ran away. We had left our food under a bush so they wouldn't break the house. They ate that and trampled the dishes. They also broke down our door. Then they destroyed the standing crop and ate the harvested paddy.
Yes, we are afraid. When they knock down the house, we'll be buried under the debris. If we try to run and they find us, they'll trample us.
We suffer. In this cold, we have to run blindly in the dark with our children. We are forced to stay out where it's rocky and thorny. Our little children have to sleep under the bushes. We are frightened.
We are very poor people. In this cold winter, we can only run away beyond that hill. It's been many days since we have slept. I haven't slept a wink. It's been 9 days now.
Forest Department had made various attempts at electric fencing and at driving the herd to less populated areas with thicker vegetation. But the efforts were futile, and the herd continued to be a problem in this region. It had become imperative to control them somehow. The only sustainable solution was the capture of these elephants. The massive operation of capturing the entire herd was initiated by Mr. V.K. Sood, Chief Conservator, Madhya Pradesh Forests, and sponsored by the Project Elephant, Government of India, and the Wildlife Institute of India.
A 32-member elephant capturing team arrived in Sarguja from Karnataka, 2,500 kilometers away in South India. The team was headed by ACF Doreraju with 2 experts on chemical capture. An experienced team of trackers, ropers and mahouts with 6 exceptionally trained kunki elephants completed the crew. Most of the ground team were men of the ancient Kuruva tribe, elephant catchers with a recorded history of about 2,000 years. Totally self-sufficient, these men did everything from braiding the ropes they used to training wild elephants.
Nomadic people of the forest, these men live outdoors under open skies. Wherever they go, a campfire is their home. In the chill of the winter dawn, the camp awakens and stirs. The trackers set off in pursuit of the elephant trail, leaving signs of their passage for the main team to follow. Their senses honed, they fan out in the forest to track down the elephants. At the Lalmati operation camp, the mahouts prepare the elephants for the day's action. A huge breakfast for the kunki elephants. Meanwhile, the most critical procedure of loading the dart gun with the lethally potent immobilizing drug is handled by Dr. Kadri and Dr. Chittiappa. The used waste is then disposed of in a fire to avoid any accidents. The elephants have been sighted. The message is relayed to camp. The team is ready to move into the jungle. The darting crew ride the charging elephants in the lead. The backup elephants carry the necessary ropes, chains, and cans of water. The film unit squeezed in. Deeper in the forest, thick lantana undergrowth disguising steep rocky slopes made movement difficult. Spotting the herd was impossible. Visible for a moment, the elephants would disappear in a flash, swallowed by the undergrowth. Twice the herd was spotted, but darting was not possible. It took the team from Karnataka 2 days to familiarize themselves with the terrain and size up the movement of the herd. They had to evolve a viable strategy to round them off. The third day of operation, the herd is sighted, the crew eager for a successful capture. All sights are on the problem tusker. The firing range is usually 30 to 40 meters and the rump of the animal the best target. As the darting team moves forward, the tusker investigates the oncoming procession. Being well concealed by thick undergrowth, the elephant is inaccessible to Dr. Chittiappa. Impossible to aim at from elephant back, the tusker is approached on foot. The doctor awaits a rump shot. The trackers follow the path of the darted elephant, and the rest of the team hastens after them to attend to it. Normally, the drug takes about 10 minutes to immobilize an elephant completely. Within this time, the elephant rushes away, and the team has to track it down again. The dart, being slightly deflected, perhaps by a bit of vegetation, has hit a little higher, closer to the spine. The dispersal of the drug is slower, and the tusker takes longer to be completely tranquilized. The elephant down. The team works against time. Within 40 minutes of the dart striking, the antidote must be injected. Hemp ropes, made by the men themselves, are tied to the tusker. Water is poured continually to keep the animal cool. This is essential to prevent distress, as the body temperature soars. A wooden peg is inserted to keep the rope from tightening around the elephant's neck. The eye is covered with damp cotton wool, protecting it from damage. The doctors monitor the pulse and temperature. And a tranquilizer is injected to keep the animal calm when it revives. A festering wound sprouts a lead pellet. Two times the measurement of the foot indicates the shoulder height of the elephant. The antidote injected. The elephant responds in a few minutes. The breathing becomes regularized. There is slight movement in the mandible and gradually the trunk. The tail begins to twitch, indicating complete revival. Drugged and confused, the captured elephant strives for recovery. On its feet, the captive is slowly led back to camp by the kunkies. In a vicious circle, both the villagers and the displaced elephants were severely threatened. Meaningless destruction of their lives and homes had urged some villagers to take potshots at the herd. The pellets injured and sometimes blinded the animals, aggravating the situation. In defense, the elephants had become even more vengeful towards man. Enraged by circumstances it could not understand, the tusker alone was responsible for 8 human deaths in 3 months. Its capture was a tremendous relief to the villagers of the area, and in a way ensured the elephant's survival too, saved from the perpetual threat of bullets and poison, protecting its gene pool from extinction. Locating a darted elephant in a difficult position, the skill of the kunki elephants proved invaluable. Running away in panic, one darted cow elephant rushed down a steep slope into a narrow gully. Her trunk in a pool of water, an immense body weight on her lungs. She was in great danger of suffocation. A sympathetic caress from a kunki elephant as the team prepares to get her out of the position. A kunki gently lifts her head as the team works on her. A tracker risks his life to keep the elephant cool. Doused with water, she revives and, helped by the kunkis, slowly negotiates the steep climb out of the gully. The capture team is in constant danger as the rest of the herd remains in the vicinity. Drained of all strength, she collapses and is revived with more water and some rest. A kunki clears the path for the stricken elephant. Although drugged and exhausted, the elephant couldn't resist charging our cameraman.
At the camp, a crowd of tribals await the arrival of the next capture. A rumble from an earlier capture greets the approaching elephant.
An amazing observation made during the operation was that every time an elephant was darted deep inside the forest, its captured companion at base camp would start a low-frequency rumble. Perhaps a remarkable example of subsonic communication between elephants. A doctor dresses her wounds and gives her an antibiotic shot. Despite the extreme stress, the elephants were eating within an hour of their capture.
Even a little calf enjoyed her share of sugarcane.
In a series of operations, the entire herd was captured within a couple of weeks. Waking up to captivity, this elephant couldn't fathom the rope around her neck.
A kunki shares an empathetic moment.
Two tuskers isolated from the rest of the herd were also captured about 120 kilometers away in Jashpur Nagar.
It was late one evening at the Lalmati camp. The men and their elephants prepared to retire. The elephants were very restless. Suddenly, the stillness of the night was shattered. The wild elephants had entered the camp in search of their companions. As one of the elephants explored a mahout's tent, a frustrated young calf tried to set free its little captured friend. Some of the men tried to noose the elephants as they wandered about. The calf struggles on in vain. And the tent is brought down in silent rage. Smelling danger, a cautious female moves away from the noose. In the melee that followed, the youngest calf, impossible to catch inside the forest, was noosed. The mother stayed by her side to protect her, and with the help of the kunkis, she was captured as well. Not anticipating such action at night, since chemical capture is a daylight operation, The film crew used the bulb of a halogen headlamp to record the events. In fact, the bulb was the only source of light for the capturing team as well. Three other calves were also noosed in such night capture operations. One restless baby elephant was given a tranquilizer, then measured and examined for any wounds.
People from miles around moved in to watch the operation. They had to see to believe that these animals had actually been captured.
Tethered to massive trees by thick ropes, the captured elephants were given a few days to recuperate before being transferred to the training camp.
Initially, the captives were bewildered and frustrated, desperately straining at the ropes that bound them. They could not comprehend their captivity. Driven out of their original home range, these free-roaming creatures of the deep forest found themselves homeless and desperately hungry. Essentially gentle and shy, they retaliated in self-defense. Confronted by man in their only bid for survival, the elephants were forced to kill for their food. For this, they paid with their freedom. Over 4 tons of pressure, and the ropes still hold, despite the straining. Being soft, they don't chafe the skin, and the wooden peg stops the rope from tightening around the elephant's neck. However, within 24 hours of their capture, provided with their basic needs, the elephants calmed down. The presence of the kunki elephants and a little interaction with them seemed to make the elephants relax further. The youngest calf suckled peacefully, and a slightly older one even devised a little game of her own with the ropes that bound her. Secure, the calf slept for hours. And stood by protectively, as later her mother did the same. The other elephants patiently sized up their strange new surroundings. "20 kilometers away, in the remote village of Bargidi, the Kunki elephants worked incessantly, building stockades. With unimaginable power, dexterity and coordination, the Kunkis and their mahouts had the stockades ready within a week. These were to house the captured elephants for 6 to 8 weeks. It would have taken a few weeks of manpower of almost 100 or sophisticated machinery to complete what the elephants did in 7 days. Back at the operation camp, the captured elephants are ready to be transferred to Bargidi, the final training camp. First, they are welcomed to the fold with a traditional puja ceremony. The 20-kilometer march to the training camp begins. After 5 years of a turbulent existence in these areas, the herd was being led away. The villagers found it hard to believe. Spotting the forest at the edge of the road, a female elephant and her calf tried to break free, dragging along their 2 Kunki escorts. 8 tons of reluctant elephant weight. Halfway to camp, a pond en route was a vital water hole. With their huge bodies, loss of water was tremendous, and it was essential to rehydrate the elephants. Care was taken to ensure that the animals, particularly the young calves, were not exhausted at any point. The strange procession drew massive crowds as the villagers flocked to witness what they considered retribution for the elephants. Relieved to be rid of the constant threat to their lives, only a few sympathized with the captive herd. Ironically, capture was the only way of saving these elephants, to protect them from being injured or shot down by local people. Irrevocable degradation of the ecosystem at a much larger scale had caused the problem that devastated the existence of this particular herd and the villagers they had terrorized. Far removed from the all-consuming deluge of humanity obsessed with power, these elephants and tribals were innocent victims of the repercussions of unthinking and unsustainable development. A classic example of mankind's constant interference with nature. Hundreds of people thronged to the base camp at Bargidi. Stockading was a tedious process that the Kunkis achieved with amazing skill. Reunited, the two tuskers at Jashpur communicated across the stockade wall.
An infuriated tusker tries to break through the stockade. It gives but doesn't break.
A Kunki gently reassures the frustrated elephant. The Kunkis carried on with phenomenal stamina, working into the night. Stockaded, the elephants had to conform to an entirely different code of existence. Translocation and release of the elephants in a suitable national reserve seemed to be a more humane solution to this multifaceted man-animal conflict. But experience has proved otherwise. Elephants always seem to return to their established home range. In South India and in the north of Bengal, translocated problem elephants have sensed their way home across more than 500 kilometers of unknown territory. Alternatively, these elephants underwent 6 to 8 weeks of preliminary training at the Bargidi camp. The bond between man and animal was slowly established. The elephants were regularly led to water and gradually began to recognize the trainer and responded to simple commands. Even the killer rogue was not eliminated and given a chance at rehabilitation.
Within 10 days, his aggression had reduced, and the tusker was open to contact with man. This herd is due to be inducted into the Forest Service for fieldwork and use in national parks and sanctuaries all over Madhya Pradesh.
I think this is the very basic idea of conservation. World Conservation Strategy defines conservation as a sustainable use of resources, not just protecting as museum piece in the wild for aesthetic appreciation alone. So putting them to sustainable use here is a very good idea. I think it's excellent.
The threat removed from their lives, the villagers rejoice. This particular problem, localized in this remote corner of India, is a manifestation of the incessant abuse and disruption of the delicate balance in nature all over the world.
The Asian elephant, majestic beasts that have always signified religion and royalty in India. The symbol of strength and power, revered in mythology and history for several thousand years. Today, approximately 26,000 elephants exist in the wild in India, and these too are gravely threatened as their habitat shrinks.
It is a disgrace to humankind in stewardship of the earth that the largest, oldest, most powerful animal on land should be endangered so. Mankind's giant and callous experiments with nature have resulted in the loss of thousands of species of life. Every day, more are added to the endangered list.
If we wipe out all other life forms on this planet, there won't be much to survive for. We have to stop and ask ourselves now, whose earth is it anyway?